So we started looking at cultivating a winning attitude in the year 2025. Let me just put up my slides and we do this. Okay, great. So we are cultivating a winning attitude for success 2025. And last week we focused on helping us to appreciate what a winning attitude would look like for us as we grow our business this year. And we looked at the fact that a winning attitude would enable you to overcome limiting beliefs. Some of the limiting beliefs that we have can actually be overcome if we have a positive or a winning attitude. We also said it determines our possibilities. What we are capable of achieving is largely determined by your attitude. As we talk about growing a business to the world team, as we talk about developing those 3 director legs, those possibilities largely are determined by what we think, what is going on in our minds. We said a winning attitude will determine how high you go. We can even say qualify it and say how high you go this year. It will how you end the year will be determined largely by what you think. Do you think it's possible? Yes, it is. Do you think it's not possible? Even when you say that, then you are right. So it begins with how you think. That will determine how high you will go. And then we said it determines what you believe about yourself. Remember, we used an example of the lion, and we said the lion is the king of the jungle, not because he's the fastest, not because he's the strongest, not even because he is the most intelligent, but just because he believes the way he looks at himself makes him the king of the jungle. And lastly, we said it's the only guarantee to change your life. Because even God says, let your lives be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So in other words, our lives cannot change if our minds are not changed. Our lives cannot be changed if our minds are not transformed. Winning attitude is very critical. So we want to pick it up from there and ask ourselves, have you ever asked yourself, how is your mindset or attitude, which I'll be using these 2 words interchangeably, how is your mindset formed? Have you ever thought about that? Type for me in the chat. What do you think? How do you think your mindset or your attitude is formed? Recently, I was having a session, a coaching conversation with someone, and we were talking about building confidence. And she said that I think some people just naturally have it. And then she gave an example of her sister who seems to have, this confident approach to everything, that whatever she does, she will succeed. And so somehow things work well for her, unlike this particular one. And I said, but in this case, it's the same upbringing. You have been exposed to the same situations, maybe the same schools, the same parents, the same environment at home. How come? How come? How come it is like this for her and it's like this for you? So sometimes we think that maybe some people are born naturally with some of these things, but I want to ask you, where do you think your attitude, or how do you think mindset? Just type for me in the chat. Be happy to know what you think. How do you think your mindset is formed? Okay, let me see if there are some comments. Not yet, but just keep them coming. In the meantime, I will share with you what I think, or what I think about where our mindset comes from. Okay. How is our mindset formed? Let me right there. So there are what I call those E's of mindset formation, and I just want to share. The first one is environment. Our mindset is formed by our environment. And here, environment could mean many things. One environment could mean, for example, in our business, our environment, like this is part of the environment of a supportive group. That's partly our environment. Mindset can also be formed. The environment here could be the environment at home, where you grew up or what you frequently hear. That is your environment. The environment could also be what you're exposed to in terms of what you're reading, what you're hearing, what you're seeing. That is your environment. That is your environment. That is your environment. And to a large degree, how we think largely is determined by environment. And that's why we need to be very careful about our association, because the people we spend our time with form our environment. The things they say, the things they tell us form our environment, and we cannot underestimate that. Okay, so that's number one. And I see your comments coming in. Keep them coming. I will read them after this. Okay. The second thing that forms our attitude is our experience. Our experience, what you have been through. And many times when we start the business, I just want to say that we bring into our business where we are coming from. We bring into our business where we are coming from. So our experience in terms of what you have been involved in, you may find that you have been involved in project management for the longest of time. That is a huge asset, even as you come into the business. So the things you have done, what you have achieved, what you have overcome, some of the things you have been through, that is what forms attitude, what forms our mindset. Because if you have overcome some things in the past, then it gives you the confidence to say, if I could do that, now that means experience, I can do this. See that? Experience. So mindset, that is one of the things that I always hinge on. I always look back and say, okay, but I have done this before, I have done this before. If I could do this, I can do this. That level of experience helps you to have a certain frame of mind as you approach something. So even as you approach this year, maybe you have some experience, you may not be in the business, but maybe I always ask people, I'm sure you have done harder things than this in the past. Because our business, yes, it's not easy, but it's not the hardest of things. There are things out there that really require a lot of brain power. I'm sure if you have overcome some things in your personal or professional life, you can overcome this. And by the way, talking about that, I was informed that there are some roles, there are some jobs where they get to a certain level, especially when they have about maybe 2 or 3 people. They have confirmed that all these people have the experience we are looking for professionally. They have the academic credentials, they have the skill set, but they are still like 2 or 3 people. Someone told me one of the questions they asked on a particular panel was this. They asked, what situation, either personal or professional, what has been the most difficult situation you've had to deal with, either in your personal life or in your professional life? That was the question they asked. And guess what? That question was looking for someone who has had an experience of overcoming something that they bring into this role. So the one who had an experience of overcoming a personal or professional tragedy is the one who took that role. You see how experience comes into play. So even as we start talking to people, it's just good because it builds mindset. That's why you start with quick wins. That's why when a new distributor gets started in the business, as much as possible, help them to win quickly. Maybe get them into an appointment, get them into a one-on-one, let them make their first sale, let them sponsor their first person. That builds an experience of, wow, if I could do this, I can do that. See that? So environment, experience. And then 3. So ask yourself, what experience do I have that I can bring that can boost my attitude this year? What experience do I have that can boost my attitude this year? Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is education. Education. Education is a great contributor towards mindset formation. Education. In fact, that's why there was a whole ministry that was put in place called Mindset Change. That whole thing was focused on educating people. But education is a great contributor towards mindset formation. And here, education, it can be both formal and informal. The formal one is the schools we went to, what we studied. That is good because when I interact with someone who did not go to school, someone who did not go to school, many times they have a certain mindset. They seem, if you interact with someone who has never, ever, ever stepped in class, many times they have a bit of self-pity, and yet they have it all. You know, they have it all. Because ask yourself, before all this formal education came in, when we didn't have the formal education, there was still a form of education that was not formal, it was informal. You know, and so people were still learning good etiquette in society. So there was still a bit of education, but not the formal. So I have found that people who have not gone through a formal schooling will have a bit of low self-esteem. They don't believe in themselves. They think others are better than them. And yet that is far from the truth. So education. But also the other thing is the education that we keep on getting, like right here, the training that we get is part of the education. The books you read is part of the education. No, education. The more you educate yourself, when you listen to a good video, you are educated. When you find someone and you have a good conversation, that is education. Education. It builds your mindset. Huge. Okay. And that's why we want to encourage you ongoing continuous education, continuous learning. Then number 4 is exposure. Oh yeah. That's why it's good to travel. You know, it's good to get on a plane and go to Dar es Salaam. That alone, just being in the room, even if you don't remember what was said, just seeing how people are being recognized, that exposure alone can change your mindset. Just like that exposure alone. Just, you know, being exposed, for example, to this kind of business, that exposure alone, it is beautiful. Being exposed to different people, different events, different situations, exposure, different places, different situations in life, exposure. So our mindset is formed through environment, experience, education, and exposure. Let me see some of the comments you put in the chat. Okay, let's see. Peer pressure. Thank you, Dr. Eve. Peer pressure is more like environment. So you can see the association there. Hey, Esther says, I think my mindset is formed from prior decisions and outcomes. Okay, thank you. Carol says, my mindset is formed by your efforts in committing to the cause. That's desires. Thank you, Gertrude. Dr. Esther says, we can decide to choose our attitude. It takes practice, all right? That is a bit of experience, practice. How about expectation of what life may bring us, all right? Thank you. Thank you all for those comments. So that is how our attitude is formed, okay? And just in addition to that, you'll pardon me sometimes when I open the chat, it brings a bit of a freeze, but no problem. Quickly. So that is how our attitude gets to be formed. Now, like we have said, it's formed through what we frequently hear. And now here the thing is frequency. The main thing here is frequency. If you keep on hearing something, that is attitude. That is how it is formed. The more you hear it, if you hear it once, it may not impact you. You continue hearing it. That's why even the Bible says faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing again. So the more you hear something, the more you believe it. In fact, there are people called criminologists. The criminologists are people who study the psychology of criminals. So this criminologist said that when someone first gets in contact with crime, like you see someone breaking into a bank, you're like, my goodness, how can you ever even think of such a thing? So the first time they hear it, they abhor it, like they hate it. But when they frequently see what is happening and they frequently see people doing it, with time, because of the frequency of exposure, the mindset becomes, if they can do it, I can also do it. I guess it's possible. So how do we beat the system? So that's how many criminals come about. The first time they saw crime, they hated it. Because of frequently interacting with that environment, they became part of it. That's how that mindset is formed. We frequently read. You know, the frequency, if you read something once, it may not change you. But if you frequently read it, it will transform your life. That's why actually some books are designed in such a way that you read them over and over and over. An example of such a book is a book called The Greatest Salesman. It's a very small book. You could read it in the morning at about 8 a.m. and by 11 you have finished it. But that book is read in such a way that you read it for almost a year. Almost a year. There are 10 scrolls. Each scroll is about 2 or 3 pages. And they say, read a scroll in the morning, in the afternoon, at lunchtime, and in the evening before you go to bed. And when you're going to bed, read it aloud. Do this for 30 days. After 30 days, go to the second scroll. Now, what he is trying to say is the more you frequently read, the more it will influence your mind. So one of the scrolls, for example, is, I will live this day as if it is my last. Now, you read that for 30 days. After 30 days, it will almost stick and become you. By the way, that is the book that transformed Charlie Bolton. So maybe you want to find it and read it. It's called The Greatest Salesman by Ogmandino. In fact, he said, when you find that book, don't read it. He said, eat it. In other words, just take it in and put it in your system. It's also, our mindset is also about what we frequently watch. You know, what you frequently see, like I talked about people who get in contact with crime, what we frequently see. The more you see it, the more it becomes part of you. Who we frequently spend our time with, again, it comes back to association. People you frequently spend your time with, you may not even be aware. But the more you spend your time with them, the more you spend your time, the more you begin to think like them, the more you hear what they're saying, the more you believe it, the more you begin to act like them, the more you begin to talk like them, the more you begin to spend like them, the more you begin to, everything becomes like them. That's why they say you become the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So these are things we don't play around with. You know, what we frequently think about. The more you frequently think about something, the more you adopt that frame of mind. So that is about frequency, really, as far as mindset is concerned. So I want to do a bit of attitude check here. Now, it's one thing to say I have a positive attitude. It is another thing to show it. So I want to ask you, what are the indicators? You know, what shows you? You know, attitude is not like saying, I have a positive attitude. You see, I have a positive attitude. No, 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 no. You don't raise your hand for a positive attitude. How do you tell? What are the indicators? You know, just like you see an indicator on a car. What are the indicators? What would someone do that shows you this is a good attitude? And by the way, as we talk about working with 3 legs, as we talk about developing 3 director legs this year, one of the things you want to do, you cannot afford to be working with someone who is chronically negative, because that person will pull you down. That person will pull you down. You want to identify someone with the right frame of mind. You want to work with a person with a positive mindset. So I want to ask, what are some of the indicators? What signal to you that this person here, this is a good attitude, and I want to pay close attention. So how do you identify? What are some of the indicators of a positive attitude in our business? Let me see some comments coming through. What are some of the indicators? What would indicate to you that the person I am working with here is a positive person, and I think I am going to work on them? They will never tell you, they will never send you a WhatsApp and say, hello, just to let you know that I am a positive-minded individual. So please, I am looking forward to work with you, and I'm very positive. No, people will never tell you that, but it's you to tell, because there are some signals, there are some indicators that they will show you. The question is, let me see what you're saying in the chat. Let me first stop share here. Right. Let's see, what are some of the indicators? Okay, Annette is saying, kindly pardon on the name of the book. It's called The Greatest Salesman. The Greatest Salesman by O.G. Mandino. Ready to learn attitude. Thank you, Dr. Eve. Ready to learn. So someone who is ready to learn, someone who is teachable. And again, you can tell teachability by someone saying, yeah, you know, there are people who say, but those things that you always learn, I thought by now you have mastered. You know, so, but a teachable attitude simply means, yes, it's the same things, but we repeat them for emphasis. Also, there are new things you need to learn. There are some things you need to unlearn. And then there are some things you just need to keep hearing so that it can take. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ib. Esther says, interest and excitement to do something. That's a positive attitude. Yes, the level of interest. You know, the level of interest, the level of excitement. You know, there is someone who I'm working with, and she said, you know, This lady, whenever we're doing a one-on-one, she is not attentive. She's on her things. Now, that kind of attitude is not what we're talking about here. Esther is saying someone who is interested. Someone is intrigued. Someone is excited. Yes, you can tell. You can tell even the way they talk, the way they approach their calls. You can tell. Okay, that's a good indicator. Rosette says people with a good attitude are open-minded. Yes, they are open-minded. They are humble. There are people who have come into the business and they have achieved great things out there. But you know what? They humble themselves. You'll even never know until you do some research. Never know. They are so humble. They are not going to throw their weights in your face. No, they have achieved great things in the past, but they are humble enough to come and say, teach me how to do this. They are open-minded. They're like, you know what? I may not have done this before, but I'm okay to learn. That's an open-minded person. That's an open-minded person. Even when you're inviting, by the way, when you invite someone, just the fact that they have come, that says something about their attitude. Because there are people who don't even want to know. What is it about? First tell me. What is it before I come? That's not an open mind. An open mind says, fine, it might be something you've had before. Are you open enough to come and just listen? That's why the invitation is, would you be open to look at? The invitation is to see, not even to earn, but to see. How much do I pay? You don't pay for seeing. So a good attitude is open-minded. Open-minded. Thank you. And it says a good attitude, they are self-driven. Self-driven. Okay, so there's a bit of self-drive. You don't have to keep calling people. Oh, yeah, how far? Do you know? Okay, yes, it is good to do that as a leader. But you as the person who is growing the business, the fact that you are self-driven, the fact that you don't have to wait to be told, that tells something about the kind of attitude and mindset that you have. Okay. Someone who is excited and talking with passion, someone who always speaks positive about the business, they are willing to learn, they accept to be corrected, they listen. Okay, they are humble, they are eager to learn, they are willing to listen and learn, they want to know more, they always call me. That is a good attitude. That is a good attitude. People are always calling you. Good attitude. In there despite the shutdown of prospects. They are self-motivated, they go an extra mile, they learn for knowledge, they are hardworking, they overcome any challenge, they are not easily angered by negativity, they have dreams and set goals, frequent commission, thank you, wishing and doing things to others they would do to themselves, they are hardworking. Wow, the list is endless. They always show up when you invite them, they are enthusiastic to gain much in life, they are disciplined, good work ethic. Wow, I've started to attend the training, though not yet got the money to register. Positive attitude. Thank you so much, Fedras. In fact, Fedras, your being here is out of a good attitude. I mean, if you can be a guest and you're waking up at 6 a.m., yeah, that says something about you. They take action, they are not biased, they ask questions to know more about the business. Good. So when you bring people into the business, you're not going to say, if you're positive, please put up your hand. Positive people, no one will tell you. But even if they say it, by the way, you just want to watch. These are things because, I mean, by their fruits, you'll know them. By their actions. People speak, actions speak louder than what we say. Actions speak louder than what we say. Sometimes you just have to watch and observe people so that you can learn who they are and if they really deserve your time. Because one of the most precious things is our time. You cannot afford to give your time to someone who is chronically negative. Oh my goodness. You see, a drowning person, if someone is fighting in the swimming pool to survive, someone is drowning, and you're nearby, chances are high, in an effort to survive, they will pull you down. If you are around negative people, they will infect you with their negative. All right, let me flip this question and turn it around. Okay, let me just flip it and turn it around. And we have looked at some of the indicators. Okay, now let me flip it around and maybe just to say that in an effort, maybe just to save time, I can say, because then, okay, let me just share my screen here. Okay, so one of the questions I had here was, what are some of the unhealthy attitudes displayed by some people in the business? Okay, we could have had time to discuss this, but what I want, the easiest way to look at this is just to flip what we have already talked about. People are not open-minded, people are not humble, people who, they are not self-driven. So in a way, by looking at this, the indicators of a positive attitude in our business, I think we have looked at some. If you flip those, now you get the unhealthy attitude. So as a person growing this business, you want to spend more time with people that are easier to work with. And that we are saying that a winning attitude is the first place. And by the way, even for you, begin with yourself. So maybe ask yourself, which of those things we have talked about are areas of growth for me? Where do you need to work on yourself? You struggle to be humble, for example. You come with your weight from your office, but then you come and here, yeah, I feel I'm not being recognized. Yeah, this is a new environment. Maybe you just need to be a bit more humble. Are there areas you struggle to be open to learning? Okay. Is there an issue with your attitude as far as self-drive is concerned? So maybe just go back and ask yourself, what are some of the unhealthy attitudes I display in the business? Maybe look at this in a personal way. Ask yourself a question. What are some of the unhealthy attitudes I display, me as Jesse, you as you, and then begin to work on some of those areas. Remember, a bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere until you. Bad attitude is like a flat tire. A flat tire. When you get a flat tire, in fact, one time I got a flat tire at night. So I was not comfortable stopping somewhere because it was a very quiet place, hidden place. So I said, let me just keep pushing this car until I get to the petrol station. And then I can fix the tire. Guess what? In the process of moving the car to the petrol station to fix the flat tire, because of the distance I covered on the flat tire, when I reached the petrol station, the mechanic said, this tire is now damaged. It cannot now be repaired. We just have to buy a new tire. Because in an effort to move the car to the petrol station, I ended up damaging the tire. That is what happens when you try to move forward on a flat tire. In the same way, you can't move forward with a negative attitude. You can't move forward with a bad attitude. A bad attitude, at its best, is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere until you change it. That's why we need to change our attitude and turn it into a winning attitude. So I want to share some 8 strategies to cultivate a winning attitude, and maybe in the interest of time, we could cover 1 or 2, and then we can complete them next week. 8 strategies to cultivate a winning attitude in 2025. This year, what do we do? Number 1, develop an attitude of continuous learning. I think for us on this call, being here is just evident enough. But you see, I want us to look at learning beyond just acquisition of knowledge. I want us to look at maybe there are some areas that you are very open to learning, or maybe there could be some things that you need to begin to do in a different way. Maybe ask yourself a question that in which area do I need to learn better so that I can grow? Also, Ray Kroc said, if you're green, you are growing. But if you're ripe, you are rotting. What does it mean to say if you are green? If you are green means that be green is to say, I want to learn. Now that's green. I want to know. I want to learn. Even if you know, it is okay to ask someone, tell me more. Because many times when someone shares with you something that even you know, because it is the other person sharing, they can bring it in another perspective. If you are green, you are growing. But if you're ripe, to be ripe is to say, sure, you know how long I've been around? What are you still teaching us? These things we have been learning, cellular nutrition, we have been learning about training from the day we started the business. What are you still teaching? LDC we have been demonstrating. Super 10 we have always learned. Now, what are you telling us? But now that you know about Super 10, if you are not able to sell it, then there's something you don't know. Now that you know about Omega 3, if you're not able to sell it, yes, you know it, but maybe you need to know something more about how to promote it better. An attitude of continuous learning. Either way, I'll tell you this. The evidence of knowledge is results. The evidence that you know is results. There was a man called Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor passed away, and Bob Proctor used to coach people. So Bob Proctor would say, before I coach you, he would ask a question. And the question was, what is the most amount of money you have earned in a year? And he said the reason he would ask that question is not because he really wanted to know how much money you have earned. He wanted to know exactly where you are. Because yes, you might say, I know everything about running a business. I know everything. I have acquired the knowledge. Fine, you have acquired the knowledge. If you have the knowledge, but you cannot make the money out of the knowledge, that means there's something you don't know yet. So the evidence of knowledge is not just how much facts you know. No, 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 no. It is results. In this business, we are judged by results. So if you say you know, what shows that you know? The results. Let us stay green this year. As we go through this year, be green, come early for training. And when you're in training, pay attention. Because sometimes you're in training and we're not there. You know, in the school, we used to call it absenteeism. In other words, you're an absent. Now, I think we call it present, but presentism. In other words, you're present, but you're actually absent. So sometimes we are in training and we're actually not there. You're on your phone scrolling. Someone is there teaching. You're on your phone, you're scrolling. Someone is teaching, you're talking to your neighbor. You're not listening. You know, so we are in training, but we are not there. All this is to say that let us stay green. You know, when you're in training, be there. Wherever you are, be there. Pay attention. Take notes. Ask questions. Don't just be there for the sake of showing up, but be there for the sake of learning. You know, if you are green, you are growing. But if you are right, going to, God forbid. I'll end with this one. I think it was who? Steve Jobs. Yes, Steve Jobs was invited to give a commencement address at Stanford University. And he came and he said three things, only three. In fact, for now, I'll say one. He said, stay hungry and stay free. In other words, just because you have graduated from Stanford does not mean you have all the knowledge in the world. No, you are going to a world where you're going to be working with some people that never went to school. But guess what? They can teach you everything you need to know about how to run a business. So yes, you have your knowledge from Stanford University. Thank you very much. In fact, my career is graduating. And if there are any graduates on the call, we welcome you and recognize you. But for goodness sake, if you're going to thrive in life, put your degree aside and listen to people who are doing the things you want to do because they have something that you don't know. In fact, someone wrote a book and said, what they will never teach you at Harvard University. In other words, there are some things that you can only learn through experience. So we learn in many ways. We can learn by reading books. We can learn by training. We can learn from experience. But wherever you go, remember, if you are green this year, you are growing. If you are ripe, you are ready. 8 strategies. Today we have covered one. Next week, we'll pick it up from here and continue to discuss the other strategies to develop a winning attitude in the year 2020.